My name is Brian Geisinger. I will be joined on today's episode by two of my co-hosts. Got James and Darian. We're all three of us are in the house, and we're going to talk about a little Cooper Flagg. I think we're going to have a lot of discussion on Cooper over the next 2 months, or at least the next couple of weeks leading into the draft lottery. But we're going to start things off with sort of like a deep dive, a full-fledged scouting report, so much as that we can do one in this sort of like podcast format. So before we get into Cooper Flagg, the projected number one overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, I'd like to say what's up to my co-host, James. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm rocking the Hornets draft hat today for a little bit of good luck vibes for Cooper Flagg, number one pick. Like to see this hat on Cooper in a couple of weeks. That'd be nice. But look, I'm doing good. This is the big one, right? This is a big episode. Everyone's going to be tuning in. Yep. This is one of those guys, and not too many of those guys come along. So I'm doing good. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was wearing a Hornets hoodie at the YMCA yesterday, or a couple of days ago, and had a guy come up to me and comment on it, and just say that he thought it looked nice, and I made some wisecrack about hoodie looks good, team's not so good, something along those lines, and he just sort of stared at me like I'm not sure if he recognized it as like a Hornets hoodie, if he just thought the colors were cool. I didn't know how to respond to it, so I just awkwardly sort of turned and moved. Speaking of awkwardly turning and moving, Darian, how are you doing here today?
I'm doing well. I'm glad James is wearing that hat because maybe that means we'll get Cooper. I was just telling him before the show, it just feels like this is another draft where we have one of those guys and we're hoping that the Hornets get him. So that's maybe this time will be our lucky charm.
I know the three of us, either here or in different places, have spent much of the last decade writing and doing pods at this time of the year every year, like Groundhog Day, about, boy, what if the Hornets could get the number one pick and draft LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards or Paolo Banchero, whomever, name the player. But this time, 14% chance at that number one pick, and if they get it, it's going to be Cooper Flagg going number one. So before we fully dive in here, we're going to break this off into a couple of sort of like separate categories: measurables and athleticism, bio and intangibles, scoring, playmaking, defense. And then if we have some time, we're also going to get into sort of thoughts on Flagg and the roster build potentially around him if he were to end up in Charlotte. And again, this would be sort of deeper in the pod too, but where Cooper ranks in terms of all-time prospects over the last 20 years for us, sort of looking at that like post-LeBron timeline. But yeah, we'll go ahead and start with measurables and athleticism. Maybe just some of the quick sort of like broad numbers of Cooper Flagg this season. Played in 37 games at Duke, 19.1 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 39% on threes, 48% from the floor, 84% from the line. He won a million different awards, including was the National College Player of the Year. 6'9", 6'8", 205 is what Duke sort of like listed him at this season. Skinny, but not rail thin by any means, and already has some strength and some meanness to his game. Measured with a 6'11" wingspan at the 2024 Hoop Summit. He was 17 at the time of that. So now he's 18 and a half or so. So potentially has maybe even grown a little bit here or there. Does not turn 19 until December 21st later this year. So he'll be 2 months into his NBA, regular season career before he even turns 19, which is a little hard to believe, but wiry, quick leaper, light off his feet. We'll get into some more of these sort of like athletic traits, but James, I'll start with you, and then you can take this in any direction that you would like to. I'm sure you saw some of Cooper Flagg before he got to Duke, whether it was, Peach Jam stuff, it was him playing up effort with Montverde, whether it was just, Instagram highlight package. What did you think of his athletic profile this season at Duke? As you got to see him play, a lot, 37 games this season, a lot of big time basketball. What were your thoughts on Cooper athletically after 6 months of playing for the Blue Devils here?
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who's 6'9", I thought he moves exceptionally well. I think he's a pretty good athlete at his size. Laterally, vertically. The thing I think impresses me most, especially playing a 17-year-old for basically half the college season, was his strength. which was just crazy. I mean, one of the strongest cores of like a guy 6'9" with that frame. You said he's kind of like wiry, which he is, but he just like goes through guys and finishes through contact. And that just popped off the film time and time again for me. And you watch the playoffs right now, you need to be strong. You need to be able to play through contact, because if you don't, you're going to get eaten up. And to think, like, some people say, like, well, you know, he's overpowering people in college. What's going to happen when he gets to the NBA? Well, I look at it this way. He's overpowering people when he's 17. What is he going to look like when he's 27? I mean, he's going to be an absolute force. So on top of all like the jumpy, the movement stuff, I just think he's absolutely ripped. I mean, you'll have seen him around, right? And I'm interested to see those measurables you talked about earlier. Like, do you think they're all true? Like the 6'9", 6'11" wingspan? Like, you've seen him every day, in shoes, out of shoes. Where do you think he'll come in on that?
I do think, again, I'll be curious. Like, all of that comes with an asterisk until we see sort of what he measures in at the combine. My guess would be he is like legit in like the 6'8" neighborhood, and I do think he has a plus wingspan. Then I would guess if that's the case, it's probably flirting with the 7-foot mark. Maybe it's a little more than that, but that, to me, I don't know, maybe a little bit, maybe some of this is just confirmation bias, but I think it does sort of like land in those ranges seem like acceptable. And like,
I see 7'1" for wingspan listed on the internet. I don't know where that's come from. Like you said, what you've gone off is an official measurement. But again, interested to see where it comes in. Like, I think if it's 6'11" versus 7'1", there'll be a very different reaction from scouts. Even though it's 2 inches, you can just see it already.
Yeah, if he eclipses the 7-foot mark, like it's going to. I mean, obviously he's been setting off like alarm bells in NBA front offices for like 3 years now, but this would just sort of like add to the excitement, into the noise. I couldn't agree with you more on the strength. I think we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into some of the scoring, play finishing components of it. But like a real meanness and like real pop with him in the paint. Like, he was far and away Duke's best post-up player this season offensively. And a lot of that had to do with him like getting good position and then him like knowing what to do with it, even from a sort of like a flat standstill position in the post, able to like generate good positioning, generate good separation. And like, James, you sort of touched on it too. Like, he was 17 going on 18 for most of the season. And this was also kind of a wacky year of college basketball where you're having like the last of sort of like the COVID players. He had a lot of matchups where he was going up against guys that were like 5 to 6 years older than he was. I actually think some of the early season, like rough patches, like people will talk about the Kentucky game, him matched up. Andrew Carr's a really good player. Like, I think he'll play in Europe for a long time. He's also a 5th-year senior, literally 5 years older than Cooper, So I think if anything, given some of the sort of like age maturation disadvantages he was at, what he was able to do from a physicality standpoint really, really jumped off the screen. And certainly when I got to see him in person this season too. Darian, your thoughts on Cooper from a physical standpoint?
I definitely agree with everything y'all said about the strength. Like, that's something that, like y'all both said, it jumped off the screen when I was watching him play. But as also James touched on a little bit, his just fluidity and just the way he's able to move at that size is something that's really just what caught me. Just because, and we'll talk about it as we definitely talk about like more so on the defensive end, but the way he's kind of like rangy in the sense of moving laterally, able to tip the ball when someone tries to pass it into the post. He'll come all the way from the corner and like, intercept the pick and roll pat. Like, he's just very fluid, and the movement just seems seamless. It's almost elegant in a way. And so that's something that really caught my attention, especially when we're talking about someone that's 17 years old. There's the mental aspect of that as well. But yeah, physically, just him being able to move like that, the way he's able to go with smaller guards. I know that's one thing that, people say with, defensive wise, is that he may not be as sticky as you want him to be, but he definitely knows how to at least move with them and get in their way. And that's just not easy to do, especially now, he goes to college and he's able to replicate that to even, greater extent, because I think he got better each and every game.
Yeah, his progression throughout the season was notable. He came in and was playing very well amid the, sort of insane expectations that surrounded him. And it just kept getting better and better. And that's a credit to Duke's staff and the people like within the program in Durham, but also has a lot to do with Cooper and sort of like his mentality. And so let's maybe transition quickly. James, I know you're sort of watching from from afar to an extent, but obviously you've studied up on Cooper. What are your thoughts on him as a guy who came into college with tremendous expectations, has sort of been surrounded by these for several years now? His ability to go into Duke to play in the fishbowl of being in the ACC and being in Durham, plus also what he did, a couple of months before his game started at Duke, playing with Team USA or scrimmaging against them in the summer. Your thoughts on him from like a mental standpoint, really, I guess, sort of maybe more of an intangibles point of view.
I mean, he has a perfect score. I'd love to come in here and be like, well, you hear about him raving at Team USA. People like that was like the hot buzz coming out of Team USA training camp was, wow, this Cooper Flagg guy's going to be good. Just looks a sensational teammate, the way he interacts with his teammates on the floor. The way he wanted to get back out and support his teammates when he went down with the injury in the tournament. The way that he leads through example and he communicates. And it's not that he's got an arrogance, which is, I think, a good arrogance, like I'd say it in that way. But it doesn't come across the point where, he has a really together team. So everything that I can see out of Cooper seems to be just like an incredibly hard worker. And when someone plays with the motor that he plays with, it's just impossible not to be like inspired by him and attracted to him if you're a teammate of him, if you're supporting the team. And it's hard not to follow that lead. And that's infectious, right? We hear that all the time. When you have so many players like that, it infects everybody and everyone wants to play like that. And he is an absolute tone setter. And I think, again, I've not been able to see as much kind of off the court like you have probably, Brian, but there has not been one pushback of like the actually person on Cooper Flagg at all. And by now we normally have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He wants instruction. He wants constructive criticism. He wants feedback. He's willing to take it from the coaches. He definitely does have sort of like I would say like a good confidence to him, the way he carries himself. I've gotten to spend time around him after games in media availability, see him on the floor before games. There's like an ease to him. You'll often see him and Kaman Malawatch doing like soccer, like juggling dribbles with basketballs too. Those are Kaman was a good soccer player before he shot up to 7'2". But just has like a loose, carefree nature to him, but very, very, very focused. And his competitiveness, his motor, and his just commitment at all times to like wanting to win while playing team basketball. Your mind starts going to some like really kind of like wild comparisons in terms of just like leadership and sort of like what it means to set a tone and set a culture. I think it was I've gotten to spend a lot of time around Duke basketball the last decade of my life. And I'm not sure I've seen, like, when Zion was there, it was just like the highlight factory, just like roaring. Every game was a party. With Paolo, there was sort of a similar part of this too, where just like his competitiveness sort of took things over, but it was also Mike Krzyzewski's final year, and that sort of just like lorded over a lot of things and sort of was the tone setter. This season, you don't want to boil down to one thing because Duke had a lot of awesome players. We were just singing Con Knippel's praises. Sort of like he exudes all of these things too: quiet confidence, hustle, motor, leadership, commitment to team basketball. But projecting outwardly, like, I do think Cooper Flagg, whatever franchise is lucky enough to get this guy, he is going to immediately change in a positive manner, or just like amplify what already is good there. The sort of like the competitiveness and the just like the overall culture of wherever he lands. Darian, do you have any thoughts on that with regards to Cooper?
Yeah, I mean, he's my kind of player. Like, I know specifically we can just say for the Hornets, there was times where people say LaMelo might never be a leader that you want him to be, and we're always evaluating what it takes to kind of be a leader just because of kind of where the team is right now. But to me, this is the kind of guy I want leading the team. And it doesn't have to necessarily mean lead in ability, lead in scoring and points. That doesn't matter to me when I look at a leader, but he just exudes all of that. I like the energy that he brings. I know sometimes like early I want to say it was like the Pitt game where he got in somebody's face and there was kind of like a little hoopla about that. But that's what I like. If you're going to be that good of a player, if your mom's going to talk, you have to back it up, and he does. And I like that though. I like players who, like you mentioned, he knew what was on the line for him coming into the season, and he lived up to that, and then also showed you why he had that hype. And players to me who exude that kind of personality, as y'all both mentioned, it's infectious, especially like if whatever team he's on, once they get good, like it's really going to show for everybody. Everybody's going to kind of follow that lead. I want to say LeBron, when he did his interview, well, not interview, I guess his podcast partner now with Steve Nash, they were talking about how guys like them two specifically, the way you carry yourself and and the team starts rolling, other guys are going to start to feel that way too. And you put your trust into them. They start feeling as though they're you. And I think that he has that kind of energy. And I think we saw it with Duke. They brought that kind of energy to every single game. They all just felt like they were Cooper. And I really like that. I think that's very important in any team sport, but specifically basketball, when you consider that, there's only so many pieces. It's not like football where you have 50 something guys. You have, 15 guys, and it's very important that you get it right. So having Cooper on your team, I think definitely elevates that.
I think it is worth mentioning to keep us like consistent and fair. Like there are always these draft prospects. It's easy to label them like, oh, they're just going to change a culture overnight. Mm-hmm. And like people said that about Scoot Henderson. Mm-hmm. People said that about Jabari Smith Jr. And when was the last time anyone brought up those players in the NBA like as like culture setters in their teams now? Didn't happen. And part of that is because the situation they went in, and those guys aren't like top two options in either their team, so they're not kind of quickly gone to the top of the pyramid. And I think that's part of the reason. But it is, I think long term, like he will be a tone setter with his style of play. I still think it takes time, especially when you're 18, you go into a locker room like guys who've been around the league for a while. I think some fans will just expect him to be like, Michael Jordan on the prime Bulls instantly. And it will just take a little bit of time. He is still a kid. Mm-hmm. He's a 17, 18-year-old kid going into the NBA with guys with a lot more life experience. And doesn't matter how good he is at basketball, how early he turns up, or how intense he plays. It takes time to find your place in that.
Yeah.
And another thing is I think your organization has to be ready for someone to kind of take that role too. You can't just, if the organization is not ready to like accept that and roll with that, that's also going to play a part into it. So.
And I think they might want to protect him from that. Like imagine year one, oh, you want to learn the NBA game? Also, we want you to lead our entire franchise and team. Like, I think the NBA teams go back against that and probably like will talk down that stuff because they want him to like not overwhelm the guy when he's like trying to compute 100 different things already.
I'll say this is where there is like real benefit to going and playing at a place like Duke for college basketball too. Yes. Because like there's other programs that are close, I think, but there's nothing that's sort of like the lightning rod for attention that Duke is.
It's a great point. And
it's a program that in many ways, both in terms of like the media attention around it, they don't play 82 games, so there is that. But they played 40 games this year. Everything's nationally televised. Everything has tons of attention because it's Duke. It's also a program that has really, both in terms of
the Hornets.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that with the new ownership group, where did the Hornets have training camp this year? Like that last season at Duke. Like I do think they're starting to like sort of like shift, whereas the Hornets were very sort of like UNC friendly. I don't think they're trying to like alienate any program here or whatever, but like I do think there's like somewhat of a pipeline to an extent. And if Cooper ends up in Charlotte, then you're going to see people with flag jerseys all over the state, Duke or the Hornets, otherwise. But like being at Duke, and in a lot of ways, like in terms of how they prep, what their like approach to offense, their philosophies, like it is pro driven in a lot of ways too. So I really do think it was a good place for him to get some training and sort of a warm-up test. And I would just say, like, I think wherever, this is not an apples to apples comp, but a guy like Kyle Filipowski, who I covered for 2 seasons at Duke, was an amazing player, like an amazing college player, and was the best player on Duke's team last season. He or Jared McCain. And I think he was a guy, even though he was incredibly productive, and I think he faced a lot of sort of like unwarranted scrutiny throughout his career and at the end of it too. He's a guy that I don't think it necessarily fit him to be like the go-to guy at Duke. Do you know what I mean? I think he was much better suited to, and there's nothing wrong with this at all. It's not wrong in either direction, but he went and had a really nice rookie season playing for Will Hardy out in Utah, right? And I think it was good for him to go just be a guy for a little bit, even if it meant being a rookie, which comes with its own tough learning curve and stuff like that. So I think that to me is sort of what speaks to maybe not the uniqueness of Cooper, but sort of one of the many things that does make him special. And I wish I could remember, there was one of the Duke home games this season. He got poked in the eye and was sort of like in and out of the game and went back to the locker room for a little bit. And at one point, his mom, who, if you know his Cooper's parents, like they're at every game, they're basketball players, they're very competitive. And Cooper's mom told him to get back in the game and go start grabbing some rebounds. So like it definitely comes like from the top down, and he's built, I think, the right way from like a mental, what's between the ears, I think is quite good. And then I was at the Notre Dame game this season when he scored 42 and set all of these different ACC and Duke scoring records for a freshman or player at Cameron. He got to like the high 30s with several minutes left in the game, and then Notre Dame went zone, and he could have chased it. Like he could have just started jacking shots, and tried to get the 40 points. But as soon as Notre Dame went to his zone, he just starts flashing to the nail, and he's looking to make passes at the nail, in the middle of the zone. Just immediately. I mean, he wanted the 40 points and he got them. Like, no, he clearly wanted it, but like that pursuit also wasn't going to like disrupt like him also just like going out and like doing the right stuff offensively. Right. So let's go ahead and flip over. We talked a little bit sort of about some of just the catch-all numbers that Cooper had this season. 31% usage rate, 19 points per game. James, I'm going to swing it to you to start here, because this is something that I do think with Cooper, I think he, in the eyes of some, he exceeded their expectations in terms of his like scoring output this season at Duke, but it's leading now towards, I think, what is going to end up being like potentially like a long-term sort of like career defining question, one that we're not going to have an answer for, in the next 12 months or whatever. But Cooper Flagg as a scorer, and I'll let you go in any direction. What are your thoughts here?
Well, let's start with the jumper, because we know that's a key part. Look, it was pretty clear he liked to get to that kind of like mid-range jumper, and there's quite a few ways to get there, right? Really loves turning and backing his like lower back caboose into a guy and spinning off that, and he's got pretty like quick dribble off that, and that seems to really be like his comfort zone. If you said like, Cooper, you got one possession to score, go out there, it seems like that's where he goes, and that is a shot that if you're a top option in the NBA, that's fine to take those mid-range shots. And is able to create separation there and shot a pretty good ball on it. The three was a big question mark coming into the year. He shot the ball pretty well. I think probably a lot better than people expected, and got a lot better as the season went on. I think I've seen a lot of coverage about this, that his mechanics have evolved quite a lot over the course of the last 18 months and seem to have really kind of made an improvement from being a little bit kind of like a side set shot to having a little bit more fluid motion. So again, this is going to be a theme talking about Cooper Flagg here. We're talking about, yes, he's been the best player in this class for 12 to 18 months, but he's also got better across like all areas of his game in those 12 to 18 months. He's increased that distance from him and the other players a lot because he's got so much better over that period of time. But just his ability to create space, again, with his speed, his physicality, he's got great balance when he makes some of these moves as well. And I think he's just a really mash mismatches in the post or anything like that. There's great footwork as well. If someone tries to take away the turnaround, he can come back and counter. His footwork is some of the funnest thing, and I just think one of those things that translates so well to the NBA. You can be, maybe not have the greatest first step in the world. That Cooper's is probably a little bit questionable, but when you got footwork like that, you just need a tiny little bit of an advantage, and you're going to be able to just get away from people and find ways to draw fouls. And that's, I don't want to go through everything here, but his ability to get to the free throw line again,
Incredible.
using his contact, using his strength, his speed, his balance, knowing, this big's in foul trouble, I can attack him, he's going to backpedal, he doesn't want to play me. Just always like little meta parts of the game. He is processing the game and then has the skills and the size to be able to then do exactly what you need to do to kind of unlock that door. And it was a lot of fun to watch this year.
Darian, jump in here.
Oh yeah. So for me, what I like about him specifically, I know that James mentioned the jump shot. I do like how, and I'm always a sucker for players who, they have questions about something, and then you can see it progress every game. So he definitely did that because the shot did look like it got a lot better throughout the season. But I also like how him off ball, he's able to make himself available to the ball handler. We've seen time and time again in just basketball, really at all levels, where players will kind of just stand there and it could be the play. But either way, even regardless of the play, I think Cooper does a really good job of making himself available to Knippel, or making himself available to all these guys so that, and then usually he's open. And he's been draining the shot from there. What I also like about him is that he doesn't, to me at least, it's not like he creates a tremendous amount of separation, but in that tiny window he has, he's very comfortable and effective in it. So he's not going to just, create this giant space, but it's enough for him to operate. And I think that he looks very comfortable doing that. And I don't think that, the whole point is to project, how that look in the league. And I think that it'll still work out because it's not like he's just tossing the ball up and just because he's so good it's going in. It's, as James mentioned, it's very calculated. He knows what he's doing. I think one thing I really noticed about Cooper watching so much of him now at this point is that he knows what kind of player he is offensively, and he is going to kind of stick to those things that he knows that, his comfort zone, but he's also going to try to push the envelope a little bit. I think he knows what's the best play. I think he knows what's the best move as he processes the game. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with having your own, process of how you do it. So yeah, I really like that for Cooper. And then let's see. I'm trying to see what else. Oh, I like his angles off when he's attacking the rim. I think that he does a really good job of knowing how to get to the rim, how to get by the defender off ball. And then I also like that he's very patient. I think that sometimes that players are just so eager to get to the rim, whether that's the shot go up and they immediately go in or someone's trying to draft to the rim. He knows exactly when to move, when not to move. And I think that's just a very underrated part of his game. Just once again, making himself available, but just not doing it by running around aimlessly. It's all just calculated. And I think you can see that when you watch him play.
Yeah, his scoring, to me, it's like whatever you need and wherever you need it. He can kind of do it. He can score in a variety of different ways. There's no like real like super weak link to his scoring package at the moment. You guys touched on the sort of like the midi jump shot for him. It's sort of like an unblockable shot, with his ability with the high release point that he's really worked on, with the leaping ability, with the frame that he has. I think early on there were even times where it was almost kind of a crutch for him because he knew he could go to it. And I think it was sort of better throughout the season to watch him sort of like lean into his patience as the handle was continuing to prove, and leaning on that strength a little bit too, to try to like chisel his way and draw even more contact or get deeper, try to get closer to the rim. 4.9 unassisted field goals per 40 minutes this season, which is a big number, one of the tops in the country. He drew 3.1 shooting fouls per 40 minutes too. So like not cheapies. I mean, those are ones that like, this is not him getting to the line because Duke's in the bonus and he, got a cheap foul, a slap on the wrist. That's him, attacking, getting in the paint, playing downhill. His ability to move without the ball, Darian, you brought this up too. Like he's just real clever, relocating, floating around the perimeter, knowing when to cut. He's really good vertical cutter. And then he's got, you can even go back to his time at Montverde, like his ability to come off screens. Like he's not like a Knippel, fly off pin downs, like that kind of stuff. But he'll come off flat depending on, what he's reading. He can either look to catch and go. He can shoot off the catch. They ran this play for him a lot this season. It's like the Kevin Durant play. It's like they'd start Cooper down inside the lane, and then they'd set up two screens. He could either come out to the right side and be in the mid post, or he could come up the middle of the lane off of a screen from Malawach or whomever else is playing center and look to get a catch and shoot three, or get a catch and go drive, or flow into like a ball screen off, like a rescreen ball screen off of that. And I mean, he crushed teams with that stuff this year. And we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of the playmaking, because I think his ability to pass is also the thing that really like amps all of this stuff up and really sort of like makes it special. But the scoring, it was pretty special this season. He obviously had some monster games, but his ability to shoot it from different levels of the floor, on and off the catch, to create his own shot, the handle's getting better. And there were even times this season, I think it probably happened like a handful, maybe a half dozen times, where like, I do think sometimes his mind was going too fast and he would like slip while trying to do a move, but then he would keep his dribble going and like either make a pass off of that or like get back up. I mean, just like wild stuff, where the first couple times it happened, I was like, man, he's got to do something about that. But then it was like, wow, it's kind of to an extent, I was seeing it as like a kind of like a cool quirk of his game. Not like he's going to be, intentionally doing that or whatever, but his ability to keep his handle while also falling to the floor. I mean, pretty special. Before we sort of like dive deeper into his playmaking, do either of you guys, and I'll let you guys, either one of you guys jump in. Do either one of you guys have thoughts on him being, and maybe we can dive into this more when we just talk about the playmaking, but thoughts on him as like I don't really love any of these terms all that much, but like a primary scorer, a go-to scorer. Yeah. We know he has this like mid-range scoring component that if you're projecting it into him being an NBA all-star type player, like he scores in the mid-range. That is part of his ministry. But what do you think about him as the kind of guy that could get you tough buckets and could be like the top scorer for a team that's winning lots of games and has a top whatever offense built around him?
I think he could be the top scorer on one of those teams, but it wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't, because it's clear how he plays he's not a scorer. He's not a guy who's just grown up scoring his whole life, right? He's grown up contributing to the team in so many different ways. And I think there are weaknesses on the scoring aspect. I've got some weaknesses down, and I'm going to talk about them because there's not many, and this is the spot in the pod I can get him in.
There we go.
I think he does need a slight advantage to be effective off the dribble. Like, he's not bursty. He needs a screen, or he needs someone to buy a pump fake. He's not someone just like Anthony Edwards, where it's like, I can isolate and I'm going to get to where I want. He's not just a create from nothing kind of guy. I think he needs a little bit, like you say, coming off those screens, just get a little bit of movement, create that little bit of separation, which when things get deeper into the playoffs, we see sometimes like the guy needs to have the ball and not have any of that. I think at the rim, I think he's 58% at the rim. It's like 55th percentile. That's okay. All right. But for like a 6'9", super strong, good athlete, you'd maybe hope that'd be a little bit better. I noticed a couple of times, like we talk about the strength at the rim where he's drawing a lot of fouls, and that is great, but it also sometimes lacks a little bit of creativity and touch. And when those guys are bigger and stronger at the NBA level and longer, like, you're not just going to be able to go through guys' chest at the rim. You're not just going to be able to go through Rudy Gobert and score at the rim. You've got to have some counters to that. And he has them in like the mid-range area, but at the rim, he still kind of tries to rely on, I think, some of that brute force. So some of that rim finishing, I think, could be improved. And you talked about the isolation stuff. I've got here, in isolations, he only went 1 of 7 from 3 in the year. So again, like, very much more happy getting to his mid post in the isolation game, not kind of going to be like dribble, step back 3, which is we're kind of conditioned to see a lot in the NBA now. That's just how the kind of world works. And if that's what you're wanting, it's going to be more 2s and the odd free throws than 3s from the isolation get up, at least at this point from what he's shown. So I think there's a few areas there that I would knock him to be like a primary guy. Like Jason Tatum is a name that we're all going to hear brought up about him. And I think it's a good one, actually, because Tatum is a guy who, yes, he has value scoring, but he also guards like 1 to 5 positions. He basically plays point guard for the Celtics for times. And I think that's what Cooper Flagg is going to be. You're not going to be talking about his scoring and his scoring package being like the first thing you do when you talk about Kevin Durant or maybe Devin Booker or Luka Doncic and guys like that. I think it's going to be a more well-rounded game in the mold of a Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And just to y'all's this is something I wanted to bring up a second ago too. Like, I think it was telling that when Duke would get to its late game, like matchup offense, and they were just using Cooper to target guys as a ball handler, they would go to like inverted pick and roll, right? Because they're trying to get him a switch against a small that he can beat up with his power, not trying to get him a switch against the center that he can try to like cook off the dribble, you know? So I do think maybe that's just sort of like basketball 101 to an extent, but I do think it speaks to the fact that like he is more comfortable trying to like overpower those guys than he is just trying to like slither, or like speed burst by them. Again, he's still very like dependent on the physicality, the sort of like athletic advantages that he has at his disposal. Darian, let's go ahead and flip over to just sort of like Cooper's playmaking here. There's a lot to get to. There's a lot of good to get here. So I'll go ahead and just open the floor up for you. Cooper, pretty special playmaker this season for Duke. 27% assist rate, 28% assist rate in ACC play. That was top 10 in the league, and he got it done in a variety of different fashion. Yes, Darian, get us going here. Cooper Flagg as a playmaker and a passer.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things about Cooper, like it's more of like I guess it's a quirky thing, but the way he's able to find the guy in the corner on the other side of the court, the way like I'm normally not condoning across court passes, but it's just like pinpoint, like every single time.
He is an insanely accurate skip passer to the weak side.
It's ridiculous.
It's
right there.
It's in the shooting pocket every time, every single time.
And I've seen him because one of my small cons about his passing is just like the versatility of it, where it kind of all the passes almost look the same. They're impressive. They're there. He takes what the defense gives them, but it's not as though he's like passing guys open necessarily. But with this, it's just like it's pinpoint every time, and he is versatile in the way he does it. Because sometimes it's off a pick and roll, sometimes he's driving and already sees the guy even before he starts the drive and just kicks it. I think there was one game, it was like in the left corner, he did like a no look over to the left corner. Like he's just very, very impressive when it comes to that. Like he knows where that guy is in the corner. And then also just like the way he's able to work like that short roll, that's where sometimes he also finds the corner. But I saw plenty of plays where he's, giving an alley-oop to Malawach and things like that. So he's just a very observant player. I think that his passing is just like fundamentally sound. It's just clean. Like there's no other way to put it. So that's really what I like about his playmaking. And then like you've already touched about like his handle a little bit. I think that we will see another level of playmaking once he can kind of improve that handle just a slight bit, but it's not as bad because like we've all said, it's really hard we're really grasping at straws here trying to find cons, but it's not as bad as, having it on as my con doesn't necessarily mean it's not good. Like I think he's a very serviceable with the handles, but it's not as though it's just bad just because it's in the con. So yeah, I think that once he elevates that a little bit, that's when the passing I think will really all come together. But right now, like he's going to find the open guy. He takes what the defense gives them, and he just does it in a bunch of different ways. So yeah, I really enjoy his playmaking. That's like one of the things where that's probably one of my favorite parts to watch in his game.
I don't have too much to add. I mean, I think the thing that makes him unique is he has the playmaking of a point guard, and he's 6'8", 6'9". So the guys guarding him are used to guarding like spot-up guys over in the corner. And they're now having to navigate, like you said, like screen and rolls. And that just gives you an advantage straight from the off. Look, they're splitting double teams, finding guys in the lob, finding guys in the... You can do all of that. I think his passing is absolutely insane. It got better as the year went on. He basically became the team's de facto point guard. I think John Shire put the ball in his hands as the season went on more because they were like, we need to do this. And it had really incredible results for like a guy who was kind of known as like a defense hustle shot blocker in high school. He was now playing point guard for Duke on like one of the best teams in the country. Again, it's not a negative, but something I think we should keep in mind with this is, and you'll know more about this, Brian, this Duke team was built with Cooper Flagg in mind. Mm-hmm. It was built around him. They went out and got seniors through the portal and guys are recruited, and they moved guys like Jeremy Roach on and kept Tyrese Proctor because how they would mesh with Flagg. And it really was like the perfect situation. You had Conklin who'd be a top 8 pick next to him. You had Carmen Malawak, who was like a perfect lob target rolling to the rim. Tyrese Proctor, Sion James, both like worthy second round guys. It is an area where like teams couldn't just load up on Cooper and just kind of take everything away because of the level of talent around him. And that is something at the NBA, like Willow's passing lanes, all of a sudden people start blitzing him more. Will he be bringing kind of guys from the weak side more and things like that nature? I mean, we see how crowded it's getting for some of the guys in the playoffs right now. That could be something that changes a little bit when you quite haven't got the same talent level at the net. But it's his potential assist rate, I mean, it was just off the charts. The charts don't go high enough. It was crazy.
Yeah, not only does the talent get better, but like the game-to-game scouting and preparation and all those materials, that it's getting better in college, especially as like the sport is becoming more professionalized on its own. But obviously the NBA, just like from it's just on another level, obviously. Cooper, super smooth processor, always making the right decisions. I watched every Duke game twice this season. And clipped every single game they played this season. There were a lot of stuff that stuck out watching them, but Cooper is just like consistent ability, just to, whether it's on the ball or it's connective playmaking, him cutting, flashing to the middle, then kicking out to an open shooter in the weak side, or him grabbing and going in transition, and him always just making the right reads. Now, I think Duke did a really nice use, like James, you touched on this, like Duke built the boat around him, to borrow a Steve Jones from the dunker spot phrase. And Duke did a really good job in a variety of different contexts in terms of like always making sure, as they were going to this like 5-out offense, really leaning into the 5-out offense around Cooper, that at all times they were going to have a shooter in the weak side corner, a shooter in the weak side wing, someone spacing to the strong side just to occupy the defense. And if Malawach is on the court, they've got someone in the dunker spot. Yeah. And so every time Cooper drove, or every time he was hitting ahead or whatever, he knew where his shooters were, right? There's all like, sometimes he would make a pass and you would think, man, does he have eyes on the back of his head? Like, how did he see that? And some of it's communication. It's probably Proctor screaming, Coop, as he's, running to fill the corner. But like some of that is Cooper just knowing, and trusting his teammates to run to those spots, knowing Sion James is going to be in the corner, knowing Malawach is going to be in the dunker, knowing Tyrese Proctor is going to be on the wing. And I think Duke did a really good job of drilling that down. Like we talked about Cooper's mid-range game. He was the only guy in the rotation this season that really like operated. Knipple got some too, but basically everyone in the rotation, aside from Cooper Flagg and Pat Gongba, was, I believe, like 75% or more of their field goal attempts from a percentage standpoint were either threes or at the rim. So this really was like a dunks and threes offense, except for Cooper, who in Gongba to an extent, because he's a good post-up player. But like Cooper was the one guy that was really getting to like shoot with really any sort of like real volume from the mid-range. Knipple, again, to an extent, but not all that much. So Cooper's floor mapping, very, very good. But I think Duke did a nice job to amplify that. Cooper, 2 assists per 40 minutes that led to rim finishes. That was in the 98th percentile nationally. 3 3-pointers assisted per 40 minutes. That was in the 99th percentile nationally. He made plays on the short roll. He made plays in isolation. He made great post-up passes when he would get 2 on the ball there too. If he gets 2 on the ball, like he's just making the right decision in delivering those passes with velocity, with accuracy, with everything you could possibly want. To me, this is like the thing that like really makes him super special, is just like his feel as a passer and his ability to lean into his physical traits, to really sort of like leverage just how well he actually does map the floor. And I would just say too, like James, you brought up the Tatum comparison, or it doesn't even have to be a comparison necessarily, but like, because Tatum's so good, he can be a tough guy to comp to. Yeah. But the way Duke built the offense this season in Durham was very similar to what the Celtics do around Jason Tatum. And if you watch the Celtics play, it's a lot of 5-out with Tatum as the de facto point guard in the middle of the court, right? And I think a lot of times when we think of 5-out offense, we think the center has the ball in the middle of the court, and you got two guards or wings on one side, 2 guards, 2 wings on the other side. What we've seen the last couple of seasons from the Celtics or the Atlanta Hawks, how Quinn Snyder has opened the floor for Jalen Johnson. You're seeing a lot of teams space the center to the wing. And then let whomever their sort of like big wing creator is, Cooper for Duke or Jason Tatum, they get the ball in the middle of the court and they're the ones initiating all the 5-out action out of it. And then those teams, Duke especially, did a nice job turning Malawach into a screener, whether that's him coming up and setting step-up ball screens for Cooper, him setting down screens for Concanipple, him setting flare screens, all from that one spot, right? All on the left wing, every single time. Flare screens for Isaiah Evans or Concanipple. And so not only did Duke sort of like build this around Cooper, but then it went out and produced one of the most efficient offenses of the last 3 decades of college basketball too.
Right.
Like it was a smashing success. So
all while, can I just add, 2.1 turnovers per game.
Yeah.
With his usage percentage of like 31%.
Yeah, insane.
For someone who's never played point guard before and did it for the second half of his season at 17 years old.
Insane.
There should be so many more mistakes. It's unbelievable to me. Like, even with all the high-end flashes, normally there's like rocky periods, and there really weren't that many.
He damaged all kinds of pick and roll coverages, like drop, switch, up at the level, blitz ball screens, like whatever. He did damage against all of those things. All right, we talked a lot about Cooper's offense here. Let's flip over to the other side of the other end of the court here. James, get us started with some thoughts on Flagg's defense.
I've been waiting to talk about Cooper Flagg's defense for a long time. Suffocates ball handlers, just takes away space that's like prospects you don't really see. It's incredible. A little bit like Lou Dort in the NBA. Just guys, it's like he's attached to you. And the quick, not only does he take away the space, then he has like a super quick jump and the length to contest anything that's on ball, off ball. It is truly scary. I mean, he's got super disruptive hands as well, makes ball handlers really uncomfortable. It forces a ton of air balls with his interior presence. And when you talk about like the weak side defender, just really good off ball awareness. Probably actually over helps at times a little bit too much. There's a couple of games like he came off LJ Cryer against Houston, which is like a really bad mistake. One of the best shooters in college basketball, and over helped off that. And that's because like he used to block a ton of shots in high school, and we know that's his MO. But that's something like he's got the ability. I'd rather him have the ability and like learn when to rove and block shots versus not, than kind of the not go and experiment with that. And just again, IQ shows up in the defensive end as well. Like knows who he's guarding, knows the scouting report, knows when he should double or when he shouldn't. Knows how to play if he's sometimes in a little bit of foul trouble. Like I know like this year people have been a little bit down on the defense, maybe not quite being what it was. I still think it's pretty impressive at his size and length. Maybe not on the interior as much, but on the perimeter, I still really like it. I think on the interior, he allowed 57% shooting at the rim, which like is probably, I think people thought he was going to be a little bit better of a shot blocker, and that's even with Kaman Malawach as well, right? Who you think would be influencing things around the rim at the same time. So allowing 57% at the rim, you would maybe hope for a little bit more, but because of the versatility defensively, I think that's the thing that really stands out. He might not be, Lou Dort as a guard or Evan Mobley as a shot blocker, but he's kind of like in between those two guys paired together. And that's what I think just makes him a defensive Swiss Army knife. So, yeah, he's a specially talented, gifted defender. And this is where he really separates from Zion, right? We talk about the Zion Williamson comparison. Yep. I mean, we're talking light years ahead of Zion Williamson in terms of his defensive potential, his instincts, his motor, his ability to play hard. He is the mindset of like a junkyard dog role player, but he's an offensive star juggernaut.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. Darian, how about you?
Yeah, so I mean, James literally said everything, so there's not really much I could add. But the one thing I will say is like what jumps out to me is that he's not just a defender. To me, he's more of like a defensive playmaker. Like he's always just going to make a play. I like the way he's able. I touched on earlier how rangy he is, how he can cut down from the corner, and yeah, he does do it to a fault sometimes, as James mentioned. But he's just so good at getting at least a hand on the ball or disrupting the roller. He's really good at blocking. So you wonder, like, in the NBA, is that guy going to make that the next read to pass it? But in college, it seems as though no one watched any film and didn't even think about the guy in the corner. They kept trying to go up with it. But yeah, he's just I really enjoy watching him play defense. I don't think that there's really much you could really ask for him. He guards almost 1 through 5, but you definitely feel comfortable guarding the wings at the NBA level. He's a suffocator. He's going to play his heart out. Like, as James mentioned, he's a junkyard dog. So I think that those are the kind of players that I always have gone accustomed to, and that those are the players I like. But yeah, I really like this. I think that we've tried to, specifically talking about the Hornets, we've tried to use different players to kind of do something like this, to where they sit in the corner defensively and kind of be like a help side at the rim, but it just has not worked out. And I think that he's like the answer to that. He's the best like this. If you told the Hornets they were going to get someone like this, they would lose their mind, because this is exactly what they've been trying to get players who aren't suitable to do it. This is exactly what they've been trying to get them to do.
Yeah. I'll start here. Great competitor and great communicator. I know those are sort of like more like intangible based, but they matter a lot on this side of the floor. And it's that those two things are like the foundation for many a great defenders. His timing and his feel for the game on that side of the floor, like very good anticipation skills as a help defender, demonstrates strong recognition skills. He's a smooth processor on that side of the floor too. The length and athleticism, like he's a demon in gaps, in passing lanes, helping in the paint as a weak side rim protector. He covers a ton of ground, 50 blocks this season, 7 blocks on 3-pointers, which is one of the best numbers in the country. His ability to sort of like cover ground too on the backside of the play is what also helped Duke be so versatile with how they wanted to guard pick and roll. Like, some of that was Kaman Malawach could do different stuff. He could guard up at the level. He could hedge. He could be in drop. But anytime Duke wanted to put 2 on the ball and either have Malawach or Malik Brown hedge or be up at the level, they knew they had Cooper on the backside, right? Closing everything off, like rotating around, being a threat in passing lanes, being able to close out to the corner when the pass gets skipped over the top, being a source of rim protection in those situations. Just really, 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 really good instincts on the backside of the play. To me, that's like far and away the thing he does best defensively. It's just like hits all the right notes, and he's a playmaker and an event creator in those spaces. Excellent above the rim rebounder, gets out of area rebounds. He gets contested rebounds. I looked this up earlier today on CBB Analytics. Cooper averaged 7.1 rebounds per 40 minutes off of a missed field goal. So not like a missed free throw attempt, and he's just right there to get the uncontested rebound. 7.1 rebounds per 40 minutes for a guy that was also playing a ton of minutes, mind you, off of missed field goal attempts. That was the 94th percentile in the country. And again, this is the guy that's then going down and on the other side of the court is shooting 40% on threes with a 31% usage rate, no turnovers, and a 27% assist rate. Like just does the dirty stuff, but then also has all of the like special playmaking stuff on that side of the floor too. I don't think he's like a pure 1 through 5 defender. No one really is. There's like 5 of those guys on planet Earth, but he's capable of like of like at least credibly guarding most player types, you know. And at Duke, he switched a lot of 1 through 4 actions, and he switched a lot of 4 and 5 actions, right? And Malawach and Malik Brown allowed them to tap into some of those switching components too. Some of the less good stuff, prone to overhelping and I think at times ball watching, although like his lapses were very rarely from like a lack of we're not like due to inactivity. If anything, it's him just trying to do like a little too much. I do think like there's some, to me, I don't think he's that sticky of a defender. I don't think his like in space one-on-one defense, I'm maybe a little lower on it than you guys are. I think he will give up drives when players attack his top foot. I think zippier guards can beat him with crossovers and quick changes of direction. I think he's got maybe some like not great habits that he could kind of paper over with in college ball because of his recovery skills and his length. But obviously that's going to become less of a thing in the NBA. I think that he'll iron that out of his game pretty quickly too. Like I don't imagine this being like a lasting thing. And then I'll be kind of curious to see like if he has to navigate more screens in the NBA, sort of like what that looks like. Like he switched a lot at Duke, and I'll just be curious to sort of see if he's having to like navigate more screens. I don't think he's like the smoothest getting over screens. I don't think he's like bad at it, but just I imagine it's gonna be something he's gonna have to do a little bit more, and I'll be kind of curious to see where that goes. Guys, anything else on Cooper Flagg's defense? I know we're running a little long here, but I want to try to sneak in 2 more quick questions if possible.
I just, on the communication, I mean, that's an interesting one to hear you talk about. I'll lead with that because that's something like, you're there, you're in the building, right? It's a unique perspective. Mm-hmm. That's not something that kind of like, I see it here and there, but it's harder to see on the film. So I guess who would you say was like the leader of that like Duke team defensively? Who was the most vocal guy? Was it Cooper or was it someone else?
I give the entire team a lot of credit. I would give the 3 guys I would give like the most credit to, I think would be Cooper, Kaman Malawach, and Tyrese Proctor. I think one of the many things I like about Malawach is that he does talk a lot. He talks the way that like Derek Lively talked when he was at Duke, as like the like guys that are as the defensive anchor are just constantly in communication with the other 4 guys out on the court. There's a lot to like about Malawach, but that is sort of like one of my things that just getting to see him up close this season he's not as young as Cooper, but he's still very young. That I think sort of like stood out in terms of where those guys were. But to an extent, like I think Duke, like a lot of good programs or pro teams or whatever, like they're preaching communication, right? Like that's like a day one thing that they're going to talk about is how much they want everyone, especially on defense, to be talking. But I don't think guys like Malawach and Cooper, that you need those guys to talk. And then someone like Proctor is just like, he's a film junkie. Like no one watches more film on Duke's roster than him. So he, to an extent, is like an extension of the coaching staff on the floor and is going to recognize, plays and sets as they're coming together. And he's also often, because he's, like at or near the point of attack, he's calling that stuff out often too. So I would give those, but Sion James like gets a lot of credit for that as well too. But I would say those 3, Proctor, Flagg, and Malawach, just probably deserve like bonus points.
Why don't we just give Con Knipple a shout out as well? I'll write it.
Yeah,
give him all 5.
Yeah, why not? But again, those 3 would really, I think, really do show. And I talked about it on this pod at the time. Like I think Mark Williams, it's something that he got better, more comfortable with during his time at Duke. And I'm not as close to him now that he's with the Hornets, but I watched every pro game he's ever played in before. Like, I think it was something he got better at, but I don't think it was like naturally in Mark's like DNA to be like barking stuff out. Like it was for like Lively was there a year later and he was just constantly calling stuff out.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Real quickly, speaking of the Hornets here, I know we've gone long, so hopefully people are in for a Mondo episode here on Flag.
We have to go long, right?
As long as you guys still have the time to keep talking, we'll keep going here. Sure. Okay, here we go. Darian, I'll flip this over to you. Then James, once Darian's done, I'd like for you to piggyback and get in here too. Let's say the Hornets do luck up, they win the lottery. And there's a lot of ways you can take this, but how would adding Cooper Flagg change Charlotte's roster construction moving forward?
I think, just to be quick and simple, I think that it will just allow a lot of versatility around him. And I think that's just going to be the most important part. I think that one thing we see with players like this is everybody assumes that he's going to take the ball from LaMelo, and not he as in Cooper, but he as in anybody that is good on ball. But I think that they would have the wrong impression with Cooper. I think that he actually enhances his he's going to be enhanced by LaMelo and Brandon Miller, and then LaMelo and Brandon Miller are definitely going to be enhanced by the way he can play offensively. And then defensively, as I mentioned, this is something that what he can do defensively is something that the Hornets have been trying to find someone to do for a while now under, whether it was Steve Clifford and even now with Charles Lee. I think that Cooper is just going to allow the rest of the team to be built in a way where it's not, you can really do whatever you want. It's not as there's this set group of players you need to get. I think that allows you to experiment. It allows you to get a couple of things. I do think that we probably should prioritize some shooting because, as we've all mentioned, Cooper is going to find the open guy, whether, in a myriad of different ways. So we definitely have to upgrade that shooting, especially as a team that likes to shoot. But just overall, I think that it just allows the team to have a better approach than, like, if you were to say they got Ace Bailey or somebody like that. It's just, I think that it just allows them to really kind of go for guys they like more so than, okay, does this guy fit specifically with Nick Smith Jr., Trey Mann, LaMelo? Like, I think Cooper just opens it up to where if they are in a position where they're like, let's clear this roster and start to build it, retool it, they have a lot more different avenues they can drive down than, let's say, they were to get somebody else. That would probably be my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think Cooper Flagg, I think he would start from day one. And I think it would mean that Miles Bridges would be your smallest starter on the team, which would be pretty wild at like 6'6". I think it would be LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Cooper Flagg, Mark Williams. And I think if you add Cooper Flagg through the draft lottery, it wouldn't surprise me if Jeff Peterson just wants one more year with that group to look at how that all looks. I think the idea of moving a Mark Williams or a LaMelo Ball maybe just becomes a little bit less likely in that scenario that Flagg lands in Charlotte, because you might be in position to kind of compete sooner, and you maybe want some of those pieces around Cooper to make life a little bit easier on him from day one and kind of insulate him from being, I don't know, you trade away LaMelo Ball, you trade away Miles Bridges. It's like, hey, Cooper Flagg, you're on the front of every single home game for the rest of the season. That might be something they want to protect him a little bit. I mean, his fit is like a physical, defensively versatile playmaker is pretty exceptional next to, LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, who, when open, are both elite top of the range NBA shooters. Mm-hmm. And I think we also know that this team needs better creation to create those 3-point opportunities. I mean, everyone always talks about Charlotte needs more 3-point shooting. And it's like, yes, but they also need guys to create better shots, because a lot of these guys who shot the ball, they aren't bad shooters. It's just they're having to take threes that are outside of their wheelhouse. They're not getting those easy open ones. And I think Cooper Flagg's going to help you do that. And again, we touched on the attitude and the work ethic. I don't think Charlotte have really anybody who is a high-level player who has that attitude and approach in terms of just being like that motor that runs as high as Cooper Flagg. It's not LaMelo Ball. It's not Brandon Miller. It's not Mark Williams. They have some great things about them as players and prospects, but they don't play the game like Cooper Flagg. And every team needs at least one of those guys. And he would just fill a lot of the holes that, offset some of the weaknesses of other players. I still don't think that's a playoff team next year, in my opinion. It might be controversial. I think this team will still have a long way to go. But he would be a pretty incredible building part in Charlotte.
Yeah, he would pretty drastically change things, I think, both in terms of short term, near term, and long term. He would significantly raise whatever the high end sort of like outcomes that are possible for a, sort of like small to mid market franchise like Charlotte that would basically have, team control for a decade of Cooper Flagg. Like, they've never had something like that. They've had some great players. And, LaMelo's a great young player on a, big rookie extension too, but this is a little different. I mean, the guy has no real weaknesses. You put him on a team like this that already has LaMelo, that has Brandon Miller, and he can fit like seamlessly, And I think it does help, a guy like, I think Cooper, like Brandon Miller, they're both super malleable and scalable. Like, those guys can just fit. They're so good playing off the ball, basically, that I think it would make for like a really smooth fit offensively. I must say, I loved seeing those guys play together in the scrimmage last summer with Team USA out in Las Vegas. Those were something to dream on, to quote Eric Collins. But yeah, I think even like the connective parts of Cooper's game with LaMelo would be really, really fun. Like, I would just want to see it, and you're in no hurry with any part of it because LaMelo's locked up. You can see how it fits. You can see how good you are. And you've still got plenty of runway to work with and to retain LaMelo's value as a trade chip if and when you decide to, okay, hey, let's actually let's sort of like pick a different path here. Let's move LaMelo for a ton of stuff, and let's build this up around Cooper and, you know, Brandon Miller, potentially something like that. And I think Flagg, though, because he is such a nice two-way player, competitive, because I just think he raises everyone's level around him, and he's such a good passer. Like, I think he would actually help LaMelo out significantly. Like, I think LaMelo would get, to James's point, like everyone would kind of get better shots, and that would be great for a player like LaMelo, who historically has been a very good catch and shoot 3-point shooter. Like, I think Cooper and LaMelo would be like super fun next to one another, and I would not be in a hurry to like move off of that. But if that is the thing that ends up happening, or even if Charlotte sort of takes a path that includes those guys, but includes some more trades with some of the other veterans, like, the Hornets just become a team to watch going forward, not only just because of Cooper and his potential, but like, as you guys well know, like, even with the Mark Williams trade being rescinded, like, the Hornets have good draft capital, like coming, which is also something that they've never had like a situation like this, at least in my time covering the team, where they were just like, they were maybe not loaded, because like the teams are loaded are like OKC and Houston or whatever. But for them to have the surplus of picks that they have, some of which could be really, really good. I mean, that 2027 from Dallas is like looks better by the day. So they look like a team that would be in position to make some moves and to have sort of like different optionality. And Cooper is the guy that, if he, a lot of those options are on the table regardless of like who Charlotte gets in the draft this year. But Cooper just, he really would just, I think, just sort of like raise the stakes in a lot of ways for them. So,
yeah.
I
mean, when Zion went to New Orleans, I'm pretty sure ESPN hired a full-time beat reporter just to cover him.
Andrew Lopez. Yeah, he's now in San Antonio covering Victor Wembanyama. So let's get
come down to Charlotte,
Andrew Lopez, start looking for real estate in the Charlotte area. It's getting expensive. So
it's interesting you bring up San Antonio and Wemby, because I was going to bring that up. Is when they drafted Wemby, there was a lot of talk about like, well, they've got Wemby, they've got to push to the playoffs now, right? And they kind of made moves where they brought in Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and everyone was kind of a little bit let down.
They waited a year though too, right?
Oh, yes.
I mean, they really did just sort of like roll the ball out there, and you know, they decided to not offer Austin Reeves a contract, for better or for worse, right? That was something
for worse.
In the he's super good. Yeah, yes. You could have had an all-star shooting guard for not that much money. You probably should have done it. But yes, going into year two, they decided like, okay, we've got to, you know, invest at least on the margins a little bit and bring in a point guard to play with him.
It wouldn't shock me if Charlotte took that similar approach, which I think would infuriate a lot of the fan base, when it's like, great, we got Cooper Flagg, and then for agency, you know, it's just bringing in second round picks for more veterans. And I think it's more likely they wouldn't do that if they got Flagg, but it also wouldn't shock me if they did, because I think they've got a plan, they've got an approach, I think they've got a vision in mind, and they'll be looking at next year's draft, right? Which people saying might even be better than this year's. And after that, you build up, and then you really go from there when you've got those future picks coming in 2027, 2028. And then if you're better in the playoffs, you've still got kind of other lottery tickets to potentially get higher picks. So
it's the exact setup you want, honestly.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Really
so
pretty,
I think
pretty ideal.
More likely to change the trajectory, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they just did the Wembanyama thing and they just kind of did just roll it over, which would be interesting.
I think they kind of have enough stuff in house where it's like, I mean, they do have LaMelo, like they have all-star guard. They've got Brandon Miller's a great young player. Like they have some guys that they, you know, if and when Grant Williams comes back, like there's some stuff that's like some of the infrastructure in place. It's like good veteran players now. So it's like I would still look for them to, still be curious to see what they would do to sort of like round out the roster. But it's like, it's not, the cupboard wouldn't be as bare as it probably was in San Antonio when Wembanyama got there. Obviously they're building it up a little bit more. Steph Castle had a really nice, rookie season. And yeah, I mean, like the 2020, I am certain just the Hornets, just like probably any other team that has, you know, a first round pick in the 2026 draft, like they have plans for that draft. And they're looking at Cam Boozer, who's going to be replacing Cooper Flagg at Duke. They're looking at Darren Patterson, who's going to be at Kansas. They're looking at AJ DeBanza, that's going to be at BYU. And other guys certainly too. But like, it looks like there are other franchise-defining guys in the pipeline. And the thought of like pairing one of those guys with Cooper Flagg, as both of them are on rookie scale contracts, and Brandon Miller would be, I guess, just about to come off of it. Like you could just see being in a really like advantageous position from like a team building perspective. Lots of hard work would still need to be done. These are all like serious hypotheticals, but it's exciting because like for the most part, the Hornets have not been able to like, again, at least in the decade that I've been covering them, they've not been able to like think along these sorts of lines. So it's sort of uncharted territory for the franchise. Guys, any other thoughts, Darian? Any other thoughts on Flagg to Charlotte specifically? And then if not, we're going to move on to one last question about Flagg and try to get out of here in a semi-timely fashion.
Right. I just want to just touch on just what y'all said, piggyback. I just agree that there's no real rush. I think with the East being incredibly weak as well, that's something you could think about as far as I think one thing that people are talking about just having the Hornets play meaningful games, because I know I'm tired of seeing the season being over in December. So just having like a couple of games where it doesn't have to be playoff run, doesn't have to be, give up everything to be a 7 seed, but it would be nice to see them play for something in January, mid-January. And I think adding Cooper Flagg, but still not, trading everybody and trying to make all these moves, I think that still gets you to that point where these guys can ramp up, as y'all are mentioning, to when the team is finally ready to make that jump. And then at that point, I think it'll be a smoother transition. So, yeah. I'm in no rush to necessarily trade the farm, but I do think Cooper will make it better as long as the East continues to stay weak, which it seems like it will. And I think that having those meaningful games, I think will just add to it.
Yep. Look, we're recording this on Monday, April 28th. The draft lottery is in 2 weeks to the day, Monday, May 12th. That is a serious hinge point for the Hornets franchise and a couple others that are towards the top of the lottery odds. All right, one more question here. I'm curious to know with you two guys, where does Cooper Flagg rank in terms of your all-time prospects over the past 20 years? Now, I'll just preface this by saying when I went into this, I was looking at it from a post-LeBron scope. But if one of you guys wanted to factor LeBron into the equation here, by all means, go for it. But I was sort of taking him out of the equation and sort of just looking at everyone like post 2003 draft. So yeah, James, why don't you get going here?
I looked at it the same way. This is fun exercise. Okay, looking back, all the draft prospects we've had. I mean, I've been covering the draft now properly for about 10 to 15 years. I have Victor Wembanyama 1.
Yeah.
I have Anthony Davis 2nd. And I remember I said before the Anthony Davis draft that I predicted he was going to be a Hall of Famer, which he will be. And I'm putting Cooper Flagg in 3. And I'm making the same prediction. Hornet or not, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And he's closely with Greg Oden, like who at the time, I know injuries, but Greg Oden, Kevin Durant, either one of those guys, I think would be close. And then Zion, like just behind that. It's the two-way thing. You look through the number, like the best prospects, you just don't have any guys that you go like Anthony Edwards. Well, he's a great scorer, but like, what about that side? Or these great point guards, John Wall or Blake Griffin, that forward. It's just Cooper does it to potentially like all NBA levels on both sides of the ball, and that's just so rare. And that's why I like have Wemby and Davis ahead of him, because I think those are the guys who can do that same thing. They can have that same impact on both sides.
I'm exact same. Victor Wembanyama 1, Anthony Davis 2, Cooper Flagg 3. Some other names that came up. Kevin Durant was like a really close 4. I think part of me wanted to put him at 3, but it was like I felt as though it's just who he became. It's like, I could have saw it then, but it's just not quite the same as James mentioned. So yeah, definitely Cooper at 3. Zion came up. Kyrie Irving came up for me. But yeah, they just weren't quite on the same level as Cooper. And
disagree with this, Brian. Come on.
No, we're really close. I put together like a top 6, and there's gonna be a lot of overlap here. I don't have these guys in any sort of order other than Wembanyama 1, and then it's sort of, and then like this is probably where I would differ. Like maybe I was drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit because I was covering these Duke teams, but like I just thought Zion was so amazing in 2019. I just thought the way he could dominate and score inside, I thought he was going to tilt the floor. Like I thought his sort of like interior gravity was going to be like what Curry is like beyond the arc. I thought Zion would be like that for the paint, you know? And I certainly was aware of the defensive issues, but I just thought offensively, athletically, how could you not bet? Like in a league full of freaks, this guy was going to be like one of the weirdos. And I mean that like in the most positive way. So I went Wembanyama, Zion, Durant, Luka Doncic, Cooper Flagg, and then Anthony Davis. Those were sort of like the top 6 for me. I could quibble with the order outside of Wembanyama 1. And I would just like to say this too. Personally, for me, I thought a lot about Zion and Cooper this season. I got to cover both of those guys up close. I saw all of their home games at Cameron. And I think it's weird sort of like going back and forth. They were the 2 most fun guys I've ever seen, the 2 best prospects I've ever seen. They're the 2 guys that could kind of get the gym going and buzzing in a way that was just different with sort of like how they could impact games with their athleticism and how that the crowd sort of like vibes with that in ways that are different than like, you know, making the correct rotation defensively or whatever. But I would say this, there were certainly some questions about Zion with the defense, which was unwieldy. But to me, his high-end outcome, and you guys might disagree with this, but in 2019, in a world before maybe I knew about Victor Wembanyama a little bit at the time, but before I knew like he was going to be what he became, I thought Zion like had the chance to be the best player in the world. You know, would be like
next LeBron James.
Would be
conversation.
Would be in contention with Luka. Like that, those guys would be like in 2023 or 2024, those would be the 2 guys that would be contending for, you know, best player in the world. And you know, knowing what we know now about Zion, plus with the arrival of Wembanyama, I've obviously had to like rewrite, you know, rewire my thought process on that. Cooper, on the other hand, doesn't have like, I don't project Cooper to be the best player in the world at any point in time, mostly because of Wembanyama's here now. But I think he has the chance to like sort of kind of like Tatum, just like be a top 5 guy for like a decade, basically, just like repeatedly being, you know, ranking in MVP votes, all-star games, being the best player on a 50-win team, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, James, jump in here.
Yeah, and it should be mentioned, like those lists, if you look back at the last 20 years of number 1 picks, there's like a lot of good players in there. But if you look at the MVP race this year, Jokic, Shea, Tatum, Giannis, Brunson, like Curry in previous years. None of these guys were number 1 prospects or talked about that in any way in the draft. Like the average draft position of that group there is probably in the 20s.
Yeah.
So this development is not linear and is as clear as like night and day it looks right now. People like if they do fall to 5th, 6th, 7th in draft night and people go, oh, we've missed out on Cooper Flagg. You know, there was a time where like people with Ja Morant was like, well, maybe he is better than Zion. Like after all that hoo-ha of that draft year, that's kind of flipped around maybe again now. But this never plays out as it goes, and there are always guys who are outlier development mountains, which they just accomplish, which no one sees coming. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, even though Cooper Flagg, I think, could be the 2nd or 3rd best number 1 pick, whatever in the history of the game, it doesn't mean he's a lock to be like an MVP caliber guy every year. And it doesn't mean there won't be guys in this draft outside of the number 1 pick who aren't going to be better than Cooper Flagg. I still said it last episode. I think Ace Bailey could be one of those guys if he hits it.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting thought exercise on just like finding the outlier guys that you can find sort of like late lottery or even outside the lottery that become these franchise. I mean, Kemba to an extent became that in Charlotte for a period of time before he went to Boston, and obviously before his body sort of just like gave out on him. And some guys look at just like it takes longer too. Like I had Cade Cunningham number 1 overall in 2021 ahead of Evan Mobley and Jalen Green or Scotty Barnes. Cade's a guy that was in a really bad situation in Detroit for a few years. Some very wacky roster construction decisions. He missed an entire year because of an injury. And then he came out this season and was all-star. I mean, I'm guessing he'll be all NBA. And to watch what he was doing against Jalen Brunson in game 4 of that, what's been a really fun Pistons, Detroit, New York series, seeing him just be that kind of like offensive force and the shot making, the play making, he's awesome. He's super good. And just some guys, it took a couple of years. There was a lot of chatter, like as recently as I don't know, 9 to 12 months ago on Twitter that Cade Cunningham was maybe this guy, maybe he could be Lonzo Ball. Maybe he could be a connector and a 3-point shooter and look what he's doing. He's almost, this Pistons team is not complete at all. This is not a good offensive team at the moment. And he is almost willing them. I mean, they're going to lose this series, I imagine, but the fact that they're competitive at all, that the offense can really generate anything, it's because Cade is sticking it to Tom Thibodeau's team right now.
No, I agree. Yeah. And I also with James about the way that MVP is going. It's just not always going to be the number 1 pick. I remember Jabari Parker. Everybody was talking about him, and he went 2nd overall, and then it just didn't.
I've watched a lot of Jabari Parker playing for Barcelona recently as I've been doing my Dane Sarr scouting. Whenever you watch Euroball, it's just so amazing to see
the names.
Just a lot of Willie Hernan Gomez and Jabari Parker and Tomas Satoransky in my life the last week or so here.
You know what I do during the draft? This is so sad that I'm admitting this. When I'm scouting Euro players, I look up Americans on the team and try and find links back to Hornets coaches and front office staff. So
never a bad idea.
Jerome Robinson plays with Nolan Traore, and I was like, he's from Raleigh, North Carolina. There's got to be someone who works for the Hornets who knows him and will know about Nolan Traore.
Yep. No, Jerome Robinson, Broughton High School, about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now, is where he played his prep ball. But look, we've gone very long on Cooper Flagg here. I hope people enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid deep dive on him. I know we're going to have more Flagg content over the next few weeks, especially leading into the lottery. And hopefully come May 13th, we'll feel compelled to have even more of it. Full wall-to-wall Cooper Flagg coverage. But that remains to be seen. James, why don't you take us out here with a little preview of what will be coming up later on this week on BuzzBeat too? Absolutely.
For paid subscribers on BuzzBeat Plus, which is launching this week on Thursday, 1st of May, we have our first guest, Keith Smith, is going to be dropping by. Join me for about 45, 50 minutes. We did a full off-season preview, looked at free agency options, looked at Trey Mann's free agency. Keith Smith works for Spotrac, one of the best guys in terms of looking at transactions, understanding front office workings in the league. So Keith was an absolutely fantastic guest. And if you want to listen to that episode, if you want to listen to more episodes with other guests from different media outlets, potentially some players and coaches and other people in the future, all going to be for our BuzzBeat Plus subscribers. So this episode will continue to be free, our kind of weekly episode. You'll still get that for free. That'll be on the public feed. But if you want to go to the next level of insider status, you're going to be subscribing here for BuzzBeat Plus.
Sounds good. Well, look, Darian, James, thank you for joining me. This was a really fun, insightful conversation to Cooper Flagg. Everyone, keep it locked in for more draft coverage. Subscribe to BuzzBeat Plus. Listen to James's off-season, sort of template interview with Keith, who's one of the best sort of front office minds in the public media space too. Looking forward to listening to that. Thank you for tuning in today. We'll see you next time. Go Hornets. Go Cooper Flagg.